Hello there, dear listener. We hope you're enjoying this lovely discussion. If you're not already aware, this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio, a Pan-African Nationalist and Garveyite network committed to showcasing the rich and varied thoughts of African people. We have an exciting lineup of shows that we think you'll enjoy, including
the Bitter Medicine Podcast.
I think black people acquired too much buy-in. Like, we constantly have to sell black people on things that are beneficial to black people.
The Pro-Black Perspective Podcast.
I'm fearful that our people are not really studying how to get ahead, and we're kind of, continually staying behind.
The Harsh Reality Podcast.
To me, it don't matter. I think people are so dumbed down, it wouldn't matter what you reveal to them. They still are in the matrix. They're in the simulation. They're going to keep doing what they did. They lemmings. So to me, it don't matter, man.
The Learning Curve Podcast.
Sexual access has never given you economic empowerment. The only person who has ever been economically empowered by a sexual relationship is the wasp and his woman.
The Cathedra Cheek Show.
When we start rising up to fight for our own, I guarantee you they'll stop doing what they're doing. I guarantee you they would have let their brother go. They was waiting to see what black folks was going to do.
Brother Bakari Podcast.
Black people love to claim folks that hate them, right? They're a slave master, and they are ashamed of who they really are.
The Forecast Radio.
Like, if you pray to the same deity as, like, your enemy, and that God blesses your enemy more than you may want to reconsider who you praying to,
And Tanzan, African Mind.
Africans generally are welcoming of everyone. Sometimes, to my consternation, I think that they should be less, welcoming.
If you love our podcast network, we would be grateful if you could rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on social media, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and check out our website at www.kwazradio.com for more information. Thank you for tuning in. And now, back to the program.
All right. Peace, family. We're going to try to finish this book, honestly. So we're just going to get into it. Chapter 10, Art and Science. In the education of the American public towards greater art appreciation, propaganda plays an important part. When art galleries seek to launch the canvases of an artist, they should create public acceptance for his work. To increase public appreciation, a deliberate propagandizing effort must be made. The newspapers should tell you about the artists or the art exhibit coming. In art, as in politics, the minority rules, but it can rule only by going out to meet the public on its own ground, by understanding the anatomy of public opinion and utilizing it. So the minority rules, right? Again, you see, this is interesting. He's talking about a democratic country, and he's telling you, in a democratic country, the minority rules. But it can only rule by meeting the public on its own ground, by understanding the anatomy of public opinion and utilizing it. Okay? So in applied and commercial art, propaganda makes greater opportunities for the artist than ever before. This arises from the fact that mass production reaches an impasse when it competes on a price basis only. So hold on a second. He says, in applied and commercial art, propaganda makes great opportunities for the artist than ever before. Rather than the fact that mass productions reaches an impasse when it competes on a price basis only. So when you're competing on price basis, that's not enough. It must therefore, in a large number of fields, create a field of competition based on aesthetic values. Right? Aesthetics then trumps price. To a certain point, price, is important. But then after that point, aesthetic is important. That's what he's saying. So, a nice looking dress or a nice looking outfit um, can outsell the outfit that is bland, even though the outfit that's bland is cheaper, right? And we know this. Business of many types capitalizes the aesthetic sense to increase markets and profits, which is only another way of saying that the artist has the opportunity of collaborating with industry in such a way as to improve the public taste, injecting beautiful instead of ugly motifs into the articles of common use, and furthermore securing recognition and money for himself. So this is actually pretty important because, like I said, when you read these things, just read it to the point of how can this apply to me? So one of the things that I like to do, or tend to say I am, right, is an amateur video game designer. Okay? And one of the most important things inside of video games is beauty. Right? Good looking art, good looking effects on top of the art, good looking animations and all that kind of stuff sells. Now you can have games that do not have that aesthetic. Okay? And of course, when they don't have that aesthetic, you want to make sure that they have other complexities that people like, other, pseudo aesthetics that people like, right? But the point is that given the opportunity to play a game with really excellent graphics versus a game that doesn't, people tend to go for the one with really excellent graphics. Now, that's not to say everything has to be 3D art, because it doesn't. People like beautiful pixel art. People like beautiful 2D art. But, and of course, that's where, you could also price things. If the artwork isn't that good, you might have to price the thing pretty cheaply. And then you could sell a whole bunch. But the point being, this even applies into a market that didn't exist at the time of this writing. This was written in 1928. But again, it's like you look at this, you read this, and then you apply it to your own being. I could even say this, for instance. There's this, back when I was younger, I don't know if it's still up, but there was this black forum, like a black political forum type, I think it was called Desty.com. And the thing about it is that sometimes you would look at it, and, you'd look at it inside the 2000s, but it would look like a website from the 1990s. Okay? And that, in and of itself, hurt its appeal. So even inside of web development, there is this idea of how to format the UI so that people would even participate in the website. Because otherwise, people look at it like it's an old thing, right? So he goes, propaganda can play a part in pointing out what is and what is not beautiful. And business can definitely help in this way to raise the level of American culture. In this process, propaganda will naturally make use of the authority of group leaders whose tastes and opinions are recognized. The public must be interested by means of associational values and dramatic incidents. New inspiration, which to the artist may be very technical and abstract kind of beauty, must be made vital to the public by association with values which it recognizes and responds to. For instance, in the manufacture of American silk, markets are developed by going to Paris for inspiration. Paris can give American silk a stamp of authority which will aid it to achieve definite positions in the United States. The following clipping from the New York Times of February 16, 1925, tells a story from an actual incident of this sort. It is copyright 1925 by the New York Times Company, special cable of the New York Times. So again, New York Times going way back 100 years, right? Paris, February 15th, for the first time in its history, American art materials are to be exhibited in the decorative art section of the Louvre Museum. The exposition, opening on May 26th with the Minister of Fine Arts, Paul Léon, acting as patron, will include silks from Cheney Brothers, South Manchester, and New York, the designs of which were based on the inspiration of Edgar Brandt, famous French ironworker, the modern Bellini, who makes wonderful artworks from iron. Mr. Brandt, M. Brandt, designed and made the monumental iron doors of the Verdun War Memorial. He has been asked to assist and participate in the exposition, which will show France the accomplishments of American industrial art. 30 designs inspired by Edgar Brandt's work are embodied in 2,500 yards of printed silk, tencels, and cut velvets in 100 colors. These prints ferroneers are the first textiles to show the influence of the modern master, M. Brent. The silken fabrics possess a striking composition, showing characteristic Brandt motifs which were embodied in the tracery of large designs by the Cheney artists who succeeded in translating the iron into silk, a task which might appear almost impossible. The strength and brilliancy of the original design is enhanced by the beauty and warmth of colors. So the result of the ceremony was the prominent department stores in New York, Chicago, and other cities asked to have this exhibition. They tried to mold the public taste in conformity with the ideas which had the approval of Paris. So, again, like I told you guys about the interior design person, appeal to magazines and appeal to the what do you call them? Appeal to exhibits, right? And appeal to let's say I say journalists. I don't know, but there was something I wanted to say, but I can't remember. But basically appeal to the people in the industry to promote your work. Okay, this is the old school advertising, and the reality is that it's still good advertising. Especially for what you would say would be like the upper echelon. Maybe the majority of people are looking at ads through YouTube. And again, YouTube does do directed ads. I want people to know that. So you can, go on a Google Ads or whatever, and you say, hey, I want you to advertise to this certain demographic or to people with these sort of interests. And of course, your interest can be you can tell your interest based off of what you're watching. So, I mean, and you probably would pick up on this. Like, for instance, right now, because I told you I'm a game designer type stuff, right? I would get a lot of advertisements from people who advertise for video games. People who advertise video games, mobile games, or even, what's it called? So there's this game called League of Legends. And then there's this thing called, I don't want to say what it is, but basically there's a way to assist your gaming with a certain app. And, that ad would show up before I watch a video game, because for some reason my ad blocker is no longer working. But anyway, the silks of Cheney Brothers, a commercial product produced in quantity, gained a place in public esteem by being associated with the work of a recognized artist and with a great art museum. The same can be said of almost any commercial product susceptible of beautiful design. There are few products in daily use, whether furniture, clothes, lamp, posters, commercials, labels, book jackets, pocketbooks, or bathtubs, which are not subject to the laws of good taste. And again, a lot of times when you're doing your video game shopping, you look at something and it looks too dang ugly, and you don't want it. In fact, there was this one guy who says, "Why can't I sell games?" And his whole thing was, if you saw his game, it was so ugly. So ugly. And even this applies to, say, my books. Although I think my latest book has a good cover and it doesn't sell, so I'm not saying it's a perfect law. Right? But my old covers were crap. But it is what it is. So in America, whole departments of production are being changed through propaganda to fill an economic as well as an aesthetic need. Manufacture is being modified to conform to the economic need to satisfy the public demand for more beauty. A piano manufacturer recently engaged artists to design modernist pianos. This was not done because there existed a widespread demand for modernist pianos. Indeed, the manufacturer probably expected to sell few, but in order to draw attention to pianos, one must have something more than a piano. People at tea parties will not talk about pianos, but they may talk about the new modernist piano. When Secretary Hoover, 3 years ago, was asked to appoint a commission to the Paris Exposition of Decorative Arts, he did so. As Associate Commissioner, I assisted in the organizing of the group of important business leaders in the industrial art field who went to Paris as delegates to visit and report on the exposition. The propaganda carried on for the aims and purposes of the commission undoubtedly had a widespread effect on the attitude of Americans towards art and industry. It was only a few years later that the modern art movement penetrated all fields of industry. Department stores took it up. R.H. Macy and Company held an Art in Trades exposition in which the Metropolitan Museum of Art collaborated as advisors. Lord and Taylor sponsored a modern arts exposition with foreign exhibitors. These stores, coming closely in touch with the life of the people, performed the propagandizing function in bringing to the people the best in art as it related to these industries. The museum at the same time was alive to the importance of making contact with the public mind by utilizing the department store to increase art appreciation. Of all art institutions, the museum suffers most from the lack of effective propaganda. Most present-day museums have the reputation of being morgues or sanctuaries, whereas they should be leaders and teachers in the aesthetic life of the community. They have little vital relation to life. So again, you see he's telling you museums should be leaders and teachers. Now, of course, a lot of us may be divorced from the museum life. Not everybody, but a lot of us may be. But I think it's also important to realize the class, the class appeal that museum may have, right? That might be a thing. I don't really know, because again, I'm not in the museum life, but that might be a thing that we might not know about. But all right, so the treasures of beauty in a museum need to be interpreted to the public. And this requires a propagandist. The housewife in a Bronx apartment doubtless feels little interest in an ancient Greek vase in the Metropolitan Museum. Yet an artist working with a pottery firm may adapt the design of this vase to a set of china, and this china, priced low through quantity production, may find its way to that Bronx apartment, developing unconsciously through its fine line and color and appreciation of beauty. And again, I think that's something to really note here too. You see, he says an artist would adapt the design of the ancient Greek vase. And then in that china, you'll buy it, and unconsciously you'll develop a appreciation of that beauty. You know, there's two things here. One, it tells you that, one, people can adopt earlier cultures that may not even be their own. Okay? And two, people can be subconsciously feeding you appreciation for cultures that may not be your own, or even that may be your own. So that's something to note, because a lot of times we would say, hey, look at this trace, this you got it from Africa. Or Picasso, he got this from Africa. Blah 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 blah. Right? Okay, sure, but but what about it? In the same way that Picasso may get this from, Picasso could also get it from, could also get something else from somewhere else, and another artist can get something else from somewhere else. But that's what artists do. And this also reminds me of the artificial intelligence complaint. Why is the AI is taking from real artists without giving them credit? And it's like, yeah, everybody does that. Like when I go to draw a human being, I mean, obviously I might look in a mirror, but sometimes I draw a human being like another human being. I like another human being drew another human being. I don't particularly see the sentiment. Let me put it that way. But anyway, so some American museums feel this responsibility. And by the way, if you have a comment on that, sorry, just give me a timestamp, because I'm not going to remember saying this. I'm not going to remember saying this at all. All right. Some American museums feel this responsibility. The Metropolitan Museum of Art of New York rightly prides itself on its 1.25 million of visitors in the year 1926, on its efforts to dramatize and make visual the civilizations which its various departments reveal, on its special lectures, its story hours, its lone collection of prints and photographs, and lantern slides, its facilities offered to commercial firms in the field of applied art, on the outside lecturers who are invited to lecture in its auditorium, and on the lectures given by its staff to outside organizations, and on the free chamber concerts given in the museum under the direction of David Manns, which tend to dramatize the museum as a whole home of beauty. Yet that is not the whole of the problem. It is not merely a question of making people come to the museum. It is also a question of making the museum and the beauty which it houses go to the people. Right? The museum's accomplishments should not be evaluated merely in terms of the number of visitors. Its function is not merely to receive visitors, but to project itself in what it stands for in the community which it serves. So again, he's telling you, hey, you can also do museums. Right? The museum can stand in its community for a definite aesthetic standard, which can, by the help of intelligent propaganda, permeate the daily lives of all its visitors. Why should not a museum establish a museum council of art to establish standards in home decoration and architecture and in commercial production, or a research board for applied arts? Why should not the museum, instead of merely preserving the art treasures which it possesses, quicken their meaning in terms which the general public understands? A recent annual report of an art museum in one of the large cities of the United States says, and right here, I think it says home design? Yeah, home decoration. That's interior design, right? Says, an underlying characteristic of an art museum like ours must be its attitude of conservatism. For after all, its first duty is to treasure the great achievements of men in the arts and sciences. Is that true? Is not another important duty to interpret the models of beauty which it possesses? If the duty of the museum is to be active, it must study how best to make its message intelligible to the community which it serves. It must boldly assume aesthetic leadership. As in art, so in science, both pure and applied. Pure science was once guarded and fostered by learned societies and scientific associations. Now pure science finds support and encouragement also in industry. Many of the laboratories in which abstract research is being pursued are now connected with some large corporation which is quite willing to devote hundreds of thousands of dollars to scientific study for the sake of one golden invention or discovery which may emerge from it. So again, this is another thing to remember. Why does America have such advanced science? Why does China have such advanced science? And it's by and large because large corporations, large investors, put into, or even the public, the governments put into these research labs. And again, these research labs are oftentimes universities, right? And of course, if you study my literature, you realize these universities are what I call, let's say, seats of power, right? Communities for power. But the point being that, it's in plain sight that if you're trying to advance the science in Africa, right, you do want the laboratories, you do want the researchers, but you also want the large corporations willing to devote hundreds of thousands of dollars to scientific study. So it's not just these people, because again, if they don't have the budget, they can't do the work. Big businesses, of course, gains heavily when the invention emerges, but at the very moment, it assumes the responsibility of placing the new invention at the service of the public. It assumes also the responsibility of interpreting its meaning to the public. The industrial interests can furnish to the schools, the colleges, and the postgraduate university courses the exact truth concerning the scientific progress of our age. They not only can do so, they are under obligation to do so. Propaganda as an instrument of commercial competition has opened opportunities to the inventor and given great stimulus to the research scientist. In the last 5 or 10 years, the successes of some of the larger corporations have been so outstanding that the whole field of science has received a tremendous impetus. The American Telephone and Telegraph Company, the Western Electric Company, the General Electric Company, the Westington Electric Company, and others have realized the importance of scientific research. They have also understood that these ideas must be made intelligible to the public to be fully successful. Television broadcasting loudspeakers are utilized as propaganda aids. Propaganda, and you see that? Loudspeakers, so on and so forth. Propaganda assists in marketing new inventions. Propaganda, by repeatedly interpreting new scientific ideas and inventions to the public, has made the public more receptive. Propaganda is accustoming the public to change and progress. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just end this broadcast, and then I'm going to start another podcast of the last episode. the last chapter 11, and then I'm going to leave it at that. So if you want to join me, like I said, go to the next link. But other than that, thanks everybody for dropping by. Let me remind you guys that I'm author of books. These are 5 books. The top left is the Pro-Black Compendium, which is pretty good. If you were to read things in order, Zubiri is a good book. But actually, no. I would say just skip to Uangalifu. Uangalifu is my bread and butter. You look at this cover, though. It's so good. And this is actually AI art, by the way. But anyway, beyond that,